Welcome to Still Plays Galaxy of Heroes, and we are back with a talk video, and we finally have our third Gungan. The Gungan Boomadier is on his way. We're going to do our typical stuff here, looking at the developer insights, the strategy tips, and the attributes, breaking down the kit and analyzing the way that we do here, and then we'll do a brief little look at the mods and the squad as it stands today without having the Gungan tank and Jar Jar present. Unfortunately, we do have to wait a week before we see any real footage of the Gungan faction in action in a 3v3 context. But for the moment, we have our light side Gungan Attacker. I was hoping for the tank, even though I do think the Boomadier synergizes nicely with the faction. He does feel to me to be replaceable. Obviously, Jar Jar would replace him, but I do even think the tank has a chance to replace him because I do like building out 3v3 squads with a support, an attacker, and a tank. Not always necessary. We see it with the Bad Bats, that's not necessary, but I'd rather have that starting point and add another attacker than have two attackers, then add the tank. But with the attributes, the Boomadier is going to add stacks of plasma shielding to the shield generator, which will be critical to keeping the generator around longer and facilitating all other effects present while the generator is on the field. Damage is going to be amplified on enemies who are debuffed by Tarpals and Boss Nass. That's not explicit within the conditions, but it's through the types of debuffs that those characters inflict. The Horn of Oto Gunga gives Gungan Boomadier Frenzy and another Gungan ally a bonus turn, and while the shield generator is up, any special ability that the Gungan Boomadier will provide him with stacking defense penetration and offense. He's also going to be a Raid Omicron character. That Raid Ami is going to appear later. With the tips portion, they waste the first bullet saying he's best with all Gungans. Obviously, that's already been known. Next, they suggest speed and crit chance mods, and I find this to be a little weird, which is why I even want to talk about it at the end of the video, because otherwise, I thought the modding for this faction in general was pretty straightforward. The fact that they're suggesting something that is not health is a little interesting to me, and it's going to be important to manage the turn order. He should, at a minimum, be going after Boss Nass and possibly Tarpals because of that debuff synergy, although with Tarpals I don't think it's as important. Oh, CG I think is getting a little ridiculous with all the extra enters between the GIF and the text. I feel like it's almost on purpose to prevent everything from being on screen. The basic ability, catch this, physical damage to the target. This damage is tripled if the enemy is shot. Tarpals is the Gungan character who inflicts shock on his basic, but this is also why I think it is less critical for Tarpals to go before the Boomadier, because Tarpals is going to be assisting. There's going to be other ways for the shock to land, so that it should still be possible to get the correct synergy with the specials from the Boomadier. And he's also going to add speed up when the Boomadier uses his basic. The first special, Cluster Booma, has a cooldown of 3. Physical damage to the target enemy, dealing an additional instance of damage for each offense down, defense down, healing immunity, and speed down on the target, maxing out at 5 instances of damage. Boss Nass is going to inflict the defense down and healing immunity with his second special, and he inflicts offense down with his basic. So at a minimum, Boomadier needs to follow Boss Nass, and you should be targeting the enemy with the most debuffs on them. When going up against the Separatist, we will instead always do 5 instances of damage. So that removes all the conditional aspects and really simplifies and strengthens the mechanics so that the Boomadier is doing maximum damage. Then remove 1 stack of recharge from the ally shield generator per instance of damage. And just a reminder, that recharge being reduced on the shield generator is a very good thing. As the generator loses a stack of recharge, all Gungans are gaining 1% max protection from Boss Nass's leadership. And as they reduce the recharge and help Boss Nass gain protection, Boss Nass's potency is going up because it is connected to protection. So as recharge is being reduced, protection is increasing, and Boss Nass is going to have an easier time landing standing debuffs, which is going to make it easier for the Boomadier to gain those multiple instances of damage with this ability. So everything is feeding into each other ability. The second special, the Horn of Otogunga, has a big cooldown of 5, AoE physical damage, and inflict ability block. AoE control abilities are always strong, and presumably this is going to do some big damage with the Boomadier being an attacker. Inflict separatist enemies with protection disruption, which they can't resist or dispel, and remove 3 stacks of recharge from the shield generator, and it gains 2 stacks of plasma shielding. We already talked about what recharge is going to do with the larger mechanics with the Gungans through our explanation of the first special, but this ability here boosts the recharge mechanic even more by giving you those 3 quick stacks of recharge being removed. And we are also going to ensure that the plasma shield sticks around a lot longer by giving it a little bit of recovery, but I think this is also why we're seeing this have such a big cooldown. But this is also going to pair nicely with this last condition here. Swap turn meter with the target other Gungan ally, and the Boomadier gains frenzy. What this ability does gives us the mechanics to really supercharge what is going on with these recharge removal stacking mechanics. Because if you can imagine this, you have Boss Nass go first. Boss Nass is going to inflict those defense down and healing immunity and all those other debuffs with his second special. Then you will either have Tarpals go, or Boomadier will follow up soon after. You're going to want to manage the speeds on these characters so it happens in quick succession. But then when Boomadier goes, you quickly use this second special here, and you select either Tarpals or Boss Nass. You can make that decision based on the turn meter, but you don't have to, because that's what you're getting with this redundancy with the turn meter swap and frenzy is a little flexibility. Because with the turn meter swap, you can choose somebody with full turn meter or close to full turn meter and use a basic ability and land one of those debuffs. Boss Nass and Tarpals are both going to contribute those debuffs that the Boomadier synergizes with, but you can also choose somebody with low turn meter and allow them to use one of their specials, which is going to land more debuffs as well, but also trigger the frenzy on the Boomadier so that he quickly takes another turn. So what we're seeing then is we're going to see the recharge being removed by Boss Nass's turn plus Boss Nass's special. Then we are going to see Tarpals potentially go and remove a stack of recharge, and if he's using his special, another stack of recharge. And then we have the Boomadier go, use his special, remove 3 stacks of recharge plus his turn, so really 4 stacks of recharge. Then he's going to swap or give somebody else a turn, which is going to allow them to start removing another stack of recharge and use another special, triggering the Boomadier to go again to use his first special ability, which will now have the ability to do maximum damage because of all the debuffs that are on everybody, plus getting additional recharge removal stacks based on the number of instances of damage. So you could be already at 10 to 15 stacks of recharge removed by the time you are done with this sequence of events. And at the end of all that, the target other Gungan ally also gains accuracy up, which is a whatever condition at the end of it all. With the unique ability, the Grand Army Specialist, this is a Zeta ability. At the battle start, Gungan Boomadier is going to lose 75% max health, gain that much max protection, and the Boomadier has plus 30% defense penetration and offense, while an allied shield generator is active. Enemies defeated by Gungan attackers can't be revived. Whenever the Gungan Boomadier uses a special, gain 5% defense penetration and offense, and that stacking persists through defeat for the rest of the battle. And that line about persists through defeat suggests that a future Gungan, probably Jar Jar, may have revives. And then this last portion, while a Gungan ally has retribution, they are immune to target lock. Now this squad was always going to crush General Grievous squads. It was always going to be good up against Trench, but this is like the final nail in the coffin on Trench, where negating Watt's revives means that that squad has very little wiggle room for error, and probably the Gungans are going to be a strong counter. Now that we've got 3 Gungans, we can start seeing how these characters start fitting together. We can talk a little bit about the turn order, but the modding I want to address first because what CG suggested up in their tips portion was speed and crit chance mods, which because of how all the Gungans are going to be converting health into max protection, that is interesting because there's nothing within the kit of Boomadier that suggests that crit chance is going to be important, which is where it's going to be critical to be looking at the base stats on the Boomadier, because I think that is largely going to affect why any of this matters. Because if the crit damage is significant or the damage in general is significant, then maybe having crit chance to boost that might be valuable. Otherwise, I don't know if it's going to supersede what is going on with that max protection mechanic that comes from Boss Nass's unique ability. And the only reason I would be thinking speed is important is if the Boomadier is so slow that we need to speed him up in order to follow Boss Nass and Tarpals closely, so you're not creating a gap where Nass goes and then your enemy cleanses all those debuffs before the Boomadier is able to take his turn. So you want to make sure the space between Nass and the Boomadier is small, and that is going to depend on those base stats. But if his base stats are kind of average, kind of normal, I don't see myself going for a speed set over a health set. Now that we've identified these major pieces, we can start talking through the turn orders. We've already done this a little bit with the description of the abilities, but I want to do it with the information on screen here. Now, Boss Nass needs to go first. We are going to have him use Intimidating Order to start, where he's going to dispel buffs on the enemies. So if there's tenacity up, that is now gone. And if there were buffs that were dispelled, we are going to be removing turn meter, which is going to make it easier for the Gungans to take turns in quick succession. And now Boss Nass will be inflicting a bunch of debuffs. Expose, defense down, damage over time, and healing immunity, with defense down and healing immunity being what is relevant to the Boomadier. And from Boss Nass's leadership here, the boss of Otogunga, whenever a special is used, a stack of recharge is being removed. And when a stack of recharge is removed, Gungan allies are gaining 1% max protection. With Tarpals, we have a little bit of flexibility, but Ouch Time is probably the special that we want to use first. He's going to deal damage based on the number of debuffs that Boss Nass already put on the field, but a little bit more important is he's going to remove turn meter, he's going to inflict stagger, and if they're separatists, he's going to inflict stun, and this ability removes 2 stacks of recharge. So through this sequence of events, we already have 4 stacks of recharge removed from Boss Nass going, from Tarpals going, and then from this ability. So 4 stacks of recharge removed. Then we pull out the second special here, which is going to have that turn meter swap. It's going to add Frenzy to the Boomadier, but it's also removing 3 stacks of recharge from the ally shield generator. But really 4 stacks, because it's 3 from the ability and an additional 1 from taking the turn. Where I think it probably makes more sense to call Tarpals at this point to take his turn, where he can use his second special, which does additional damage on the number of debuffs on the character. But you're also calling somebody to assist, and that could be Boss Nass so that he lands another debuff, or you can be calling in the Boomadier. But I would only do that if there's a shocked enemy available to have the Boomadier assist on, because the Boomadier is doing multiple instances of damage on shocked enemies with his basic. But as Tarpals uses this ability, that's another stack of recharge being removed, and then that's triggering Frenzy on the Boomadier, where he can now use his first special, which does multiple instances of damage on the proper debuffs of speed down, healing immunity, and defense down. And let's say in an ideal circumstance or up against separatist enemies where you get those 5 stacks of 5 instances of damage, you are also getting 5 stacks of recharge removed based on instances of damage, which is really 6 because you're also counting the turn from the Gungan as an additional stack. So at the end of that sequence of events, we have 15 stacks of recharge that have been removed. removed, and 15 additional percentage of max protection added to all the Gungans, which is also an additional 15 potency on Boss Nass, setting up for additional turns and additional damage as these abilities keep feeding into each other and as these Gungans take more turns and become a little bit more resilient and more dangerous throughout the progression. So in a week, we get to test out if we can actually get these characters working at a 4-star year 11 level. I will be doing that right away. I will be using my crystals in that fashion. I don't expect to see the tank for about a month. Like, I'd be a little surprised to see him before 5v5 stars. Now, they do have to get Rat Tail, Obi-Wan, and the Master Qui-Gon in the game soon, because they gave themselves an artificial timeline of before Queen Amidala is active, but they still have 2 months to sequence those out. I do think we'll see a little gap before more Gungans, because I don't think they're also ready to start the Jar Jar event all that quickly, because really once they release the tank, they're starting the clock on Jar Jar. But we'll wrap it up there. Thank you for watching. Be excellent to each other, everybody. This is Still Plays Galaxy of Heroes.